Hi, it's your girl Morena, Aire, Fuego. I am here to give you all a little bit of some tarot deck review, specifically the tarot decks that I own. I own 5.5 decks, and I'll explain the half in a little bit, but before I start that, a little about me. I am the owner of Morena de Aire y Fuego LLC. It is a botanica and metaphysical shop in Southern California. We don't have a physical location yet. We're mostly at a variety of pop-up markets here in San Diego. But we do have an online store, and we're working to get it ready to launch for all of the people who are interested in buying something that's witchy, and especially those who are very much in tune, trying to get in tune to someone who is a person of color, a woman of color in again, my personal life. So I did study tarot. I did take tarot lessons, tarot classes. Um, and I've been reading tarot since about 2020. So 3 years now. We're in 2020. Oh my God, no. We're 4 years now, 2024. Um, and I do know all the traditional meanings, but I read intuitively. And what I mean by that is I don't prefer to do sort of like spreads. Um, I can do spreads, but me personally, I don't prefer. I really just shuffle my deck and just start pulling the cards that again like jump out. They usually physically jump out um, at me. And I also try not to look at the guidebooks. I keep all of my guidebooks because there's a purpose to them. But I am very much into the imagery of the card, and I take that and compare it with my knowledge of the traditional meaning of the card, and that's where the message comes out. And that is what I mean by I read intuitively. Each and every one of my decks, the way I bonded with them, I went through every single card. Again, I didn't read the guidebook until I was after and until I was already bonded with the deck. But I went through each individual card. I cleansed my deck with like smoke or and it could be smoke from a bundle or smoke from incense or and that's predominantly how I did it, but you can also, place it under sand, I'm sorry, salt or also, you can use a cleansing crystal, like selenite is really good for it. And that's sort of how you remove the energy of anybody who's touched it before. Even if it's new, people's energy kind of go towards it. So after I cleansed it, after I opened it and looked at every single card, kind of looked at and thought about what they meant to me, then I do sleep with it under my pillow for a few days. I kind of take it everywhere with me. It's always with me. So again, that's kind of bonding. I do pull a few cards here and there, but not really trying to force a full on reading just yet. I'm just trying to really understand the deck and have the deck understand me. And that's my process. But I again have 5 different decks that I'm going to be reviewing here today. The first deck that I owned is the Muses deck, and the reason why I bought it, because this was my first deck, is because it's very much feminine in terms of every single card is feminine, even like the kings, the muses. So everything is feminine, and as a woman, I was very much called to that, and I really also liked the colors. So I'm going to show you a few cards from the deck so you can take a look at it. Oh, I also really like that the suits uh were based more on, I don't know, they just called to me. For example, voices, which is our swords, which is our traditional air sign sort of suit. Um, it's right here. So this is the page of voices. So in a traditional deck would be the Page of Swords. I really like the imagery. I really like the colors. Let me see. Here's another one. The Hanged Muse. So this would be the Hanged Man. Again, really like the colors and the imagery. It just speaks to me. And the last card that I will show you all is our Ace of Materials. This deck I used for almost a year, I would say, before I bought my next deck of cards. And so it's again the oldest deck. The one that I just this is the one that I pull from. For my everyday pulls, this is still it. So, sort of some pros and cons. This is again very visual, very great imagery. Probably because of it being my first deck, it's the one that I would say I'm most bonded to, and so it's just and that is why I pick it for my personal readings. Some of the cons of it, I don't like, me personally, that the kings, instead of the card being, upright, it's sideways. And so especially if you read the reversed meaning of cards, there's no really way of telling if it's upside down, or at least not for me. I'm sure you can assign it meaning, but it's always sideways. So I find it really hard. And so I tend to not actually take a look at the reverse meanings with this deck. Um, and then also I feel like some, not all of the imagery is a little too vague. So those are sort of my pros and cons. My advice, my final thoughts is, if you're grabbing this deck, which I highly, highly recommend, I would say that you should learn the traditional meanings of the cards of the tarot before you get this deck, or um any in any non-traditional imagery based deck. That is what I recommend. All right, so moving on to my second deck. I was excited to try something new. I wanted to work on a lot of like love readings, and I was also myself going through sort of a time where it was very much sort of like a sexual liberation kind of time. And so the next deck I got was the Sexual Magic deck. Um, and I don't know if it was right for me. So I'm going to show you a few cards. We have here the Emperor, and it does have the names of the card in 4 different languages. It has Spanish, English, French, and I believe German. And let me show you another card right here. We have here they call it the Knave of Pentacles right here. And then this next card that I'm going to show you is the third card and last one. And this is the Devil card. So the imagery is very old school, and that's probably one of the cons that I would say. It just didn't really resonate with me. Every time I read with this deck, it was just very hard for me to connect with it. I mean, yeah, I am bonded to the deck, and at the end of the day, I was able to tell the message, but it just didn't. It wasn't an easy. It didn't come as easily as it did with the Muses deck, and I also personally, as a queer woman, I also didn't like that it was very much straight imagery, like straight couples is what we saw. I also didn't like that it was a lot of um really like white people. I am a woman of color, and um I didn't like that at all either. And the few people that were of color were in very negative cards, and so that just didn't really sit with me. I also didn't like how the length of the cards, so I'm gonna go ahead and take it out again. Just one card. It's it's short and it's long, and I have short hands, and so it's also hard for me to shuffle with these. Um, and so that's just my preference. I probably wouldn't buy it again. And I'm not saying I don't recommend it, but it's not for me. I'm actually going to think it through and maybe see if there's someone else who connects with this deck a little bit better than me and gift it to them. Um, and then because of the fact that it just wasn't the right deck, and I wanted to go for something a little bit more traditional from that experience, and my original deck um wasn't the traditional deck. I actually got the black and gold edition of the Raider Waite Tarot, which is this is one of the cards. It's the my Roman numerals. It is the Eight of Wands, and so again, traditional card, traditional meaning. It's just black and gold, and I really like it because it's like foil, sort of. Um, Let me go ahead and show you another card. It is the Moon card. And then my last card that I will show you is our 10 of Pentacles. So was really, it did what I needed it to do. It was gonna return to the traditional imagery, the traditional um, card size and everything. And so this is actually the deck that I use when my general deck when I use for my general readings. And I use it with mostly everybody because it is that traditional. I also do like that it's still very artistic because again it's black with gold foil. It was also a quicker bond than the Sexual Magic Tarot deck. One con, and probably the only con that I have for this deck, is that it is not in full color. And so, as someone who takes on um, the imagery a lot and sort of like takes a look at everything in the card, every little aspect of the artwork, it does actually negatively affect um the messages, because I can't see all the colors that traditionally come with the card. However, I'm still able to do my readings normally. It's just something that I would think about twice if I were to repurchase this deck. So for that reason, because it doesn't have all of the colors, I wouldn't recommend it as a first deck. I would, however, recommend a Raider Waite Smith, I think, deck as your first deck. And then delve into, again, once again, once you know the traditional meanings, once you've studied, once you've done all that, then move on to something that calls you more, would be my recommendation. So then from there, I wanted to experiment a little bit more and try to find something that did call to me a little bit more as again a woman of color. And because I had the experience that I had with the sexual magic deck, I actually did some research and I found the Hoodoo Tarot deck. And I am not black, I am Mexican. But it was through my research, it was said that it was a good deck for people of color to connect with. And so that is the one that I got. And I'll show you a few cards and you'll see a little bit more of like why I explained this deck. But this is the Bishop. Yes, Bishop CH Mason card. This is one of the major arcana decks. Show you another one. We have here the Six of Knives. They also don't go with the names of the traditional cards. So they have baskets, knives, sticks instead of wands, coins instead of pentacles, so baskets instead of cups, and knives instead of swords. So that's what they do. And then we also have here number 10, who's Aunt Caroline. So I like this deck. Some pros is that it's a lot smaller. So again, in comparison to my little hand, it is great. Sort of the same size as a regular, plain deck. So it works perfect. I didn't like that although I don't rely on the guidebooks as much. I do not have my major arcana memorized by number. So and because the major arcana are are those Anchor, Caroline, and Bishop, like you see here, this is number 10. That's what I wanted to refer back to. And it didn't have a physical guidebook. It had a link to finding it online, and I do have it saved as a PDF, but it's just harder on the spot during my readings to be able to pull it. And I feel like because I don't use it very often, it doesn't help on the credibility side. Um, but so some cons, as I just mentioned, that the fact there's no physical guidebook. Also, because I am not Black, because I wasn't raised in the South, and that's not my heritage, my traditions. Some of it, some of the names, some of the imagery, just don't really. It's harder to really understand. That's why I have no idea who Bishop C.H. Mason is, unless I read more about him, which the guidebook does beautifully, and what they explain why they chose this specific person. Um, and so that's what I don't like about it, me personally. So I do feel like an outsider when I work with it, outsider to the culture and to the meaning behind it, but it's easy for me to work with this one because at the end of the day, I feel like I feel a little bit more connected than maybe a person who is Caucasian would be. I also really like it because it's very ancestor based. And so whenever I'm truly trying to work with my ancestors or just the ancestors overall of whoever I'm doing the reading for, this is the deck that I tend to pick out. And then I waited a really, really long time to get another deck. This is my newest deck. And so I have the Botanica Oculta Tarot. And so you'll see it here, and pull some cards out. The reason why I was called to this one is because I am studying herbalism. I am a student of herbalism. And so I've been trying to connect with that side more. And the fact that it was Botanica caught my attention. I was like, oh, plants. And then also the name, the fact that it was oculta, so occult, sort of like hidden, that called to me as well. So I'm going to show you here. This is the 9 of Cups. And then at the bottom below it, it also has the flower name. This one is the periwinkle vines. We also have here our 10 of Swords. And this is the Coronilla Minima. And my last card I will show you all is our 5 of Swords, and it is the Scorpion Bitch. And pros and cons for this deck. I I do really think that the drawings are beautiful. And I think for someone who works with imagery, that's it's decent. It could be better. So that's sort of a pro and a con. I also think that the colors are not as vibrant and bright, and so that also is something that I'm just like, it like affects a little. But at the end of the day, I'm still able to read them. I also don't know the majority of the plants that they use, the majority of the flowers, because that's truly what it is, flowers, with a few non-flower plants that they, allocate to the card. And so I have been relying on the guidebook, and the guidebook truly confuses me because I feel like there's no consistency. Um, it usually breaks it down as like the plant meaning, and then it sometimes it goes into the history, sometimes it briefly touches on like the plant meaning and what the plant itself means, and then sometimes it goes on forever and it's just like what's the point here. And then it gives you the traditional meaning of the card, and I know that it does sometimes add. I feel like the author, the creator, like they add a little bit of a twist to it. So sometimes I'm like, oh, I hadn't seen it this way. And then it sort of explains the story, and that is truly what confuses me. I don't understand it, and so I've stopped. I've stopped using the guidebook. I'm actually going to do my own research on the plant because I feel like as an intuitive reader, that's just what's going to help me. And then my half deck that I mentioned here, I actually got it before the Botanica Oculta deck, but since it's a half deck, I am mentioning it last. We have here our original Goddess Provisions Major Arcana. So I bought this because they have sort of a they call them trading cards, but it's tarot deck, tarot cards, oracle cards. And they had a few series of them, and I bought them all thinking I was going to be able to start my own um my own oracle deck using all of them. And then I worked with them for a little bit and decided I just wanted to split them. Um they worked with an artist, um and Nguyen, and so that artist designed them, and I think they're beautiful. I'm going to show you one here, the Magician. These are only the major arcana, so only 22 cards. We have here the Star, and then last card I will pull for you all is our Empress card. And so I mean I have no complaints whatsoever on the art. It is beautiful, it is very detailed. Again, as someone um who is very based off of the imagery of the card, I think it is perfect. So that is my pro. I also think it's a good size. It was a good price. The only con that I have for this half deck is that because they created it, I think trying to make it a build your own oracle deck, it is only the major arcana. And I really wish that they would come up with the suits and all of that. And I would purchase that to kind of complete the deck because I do think that they have great, great work. Um, and it could be beautiful. So, um, yes, that is it. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention about the Botanica Oculta, I am still continue to work with for it. It's not what I expected. I was envisioning it to be more herbalism based and less flower based. I was hoping to learn more about um, you know, eucalyptus and sort of the maybe magical properties and sort of all of that. I thought that it would be herbalism build connecting into tarot and the traditional meanings of tarot, and that's not what it is. Um, so I was a little disappointed, but you know, it is what it is, and I probably should have looked at the deck, um, looked at the deck a little bit more and studied it more. I kind of bought it on a whim, as in like it was something I saw and I was like, I have to have it. I didn't even really look at it that much or do my research beforehand. Um, but I do really like all my decks. I probably will be expanding. Maybe not soon, but because I like to work with them consistently. I don't like to keep them, you know, in a box or in their little area, and not be used or touched in a while. Although I know that some of them currently are in that status. Um, so yeah, I do plan to get a few more, and I most certainly will share a review of those as well. I will be also posting a secondary video shortly, and by shortly maybe it's next week, about the oracle decks that I have, and then I'll go into sort of that my the goddess provisions, different decks that build your own deck, um, for oracle cards. So, thank you all for watching, and I truly do recommend, um, you know, you get your own deck, and I really like all of these decks. Some of them weren't for me, specifically the sexual magic one, but you know, I would still recommend it to other people. And thanks for watching. Bye.